Thank you. I will try to be brief so that we catch up a little bit with the time that we're behind, given that the day is long. I invited Oliver to stand here by my side, but he said no. So let me just talk about this paper. This is work in progress. This is very preliminary, so your comments would be hugely appreciated. This is joint work with Patricia Justino, Santiago Tobon, and Martín Vanegas-Arias. Okay, so taxation is important for development. So historically, we know that taxation has been important for state building and also for the capacity of governments to provide public goods and services. Today, this is also important for development and state building in lower income countries. We have a lot of evidence of this historically and currently. And tax revenue has a strong association with economic development, and there are also sort of theoretical and empirical papers showing that this is the case, both historically and also more recently. So, conflict affects taxation, and there are a lot of channels that have been studied. Negative reciprocity of taxpayers, low investments in fiscal capacity, undermining state legitimacy, and capture of local institutions by armed groups. Some of the people in this room have contributed to this literature. There is not a lot on the effect on conflict on the tax base, and particularly one dimension of conflict, which is the size of the illegal economies. So this is what this paper is about, and this is the obvious slide that is not surprising for this crowd. This is important because conflict is a big and growing global phenomenon, and the shadow economy is also very large. Recent calculations, point out that it is about 12% of GDP in the world, but this is almost 40% of GDP in developing countries, and this includes, not only and mostly not informality only, but also a lot of illegal economies. Okay, so it confounds a little bit the two things, but illegal economies are in here. So and it is also important because by reducing the tax base and other dimensions of the capacity of governments to collect taxes, illegal activities and conflict can create poverty traps. Okay, so this is just descriptive. There's a systematic pattern of low fiscal capacity in conflict-affected areas across all regions of the world. So this is tax revenues over GDP in conflict and non-conflict affected areas in different regions of the world, and you see that essentially there is less tax capacity in conflict-affected areas. And also, let me just jump directly into what we do here. So our context is Colombia. Colombia has about 1,100 municipalities, and they receive a lot of transfer from the government, from the central government. So this is a sort of centralized, it's not a federal government. So they receive transfer from the central government. But in addition to that, they also can levy their own taxes. And they can allocate their revenues from their own taxes discretionarily. So they have incentives to collect taxes because the transfers that they get from the government are earmarked into particular uses. Okay, so they do have incentives to collect their own taxes, and there are two important taxes that local governments can collect, which are the property tax, which is a share of the property value, and the valuation is actually carried out by the executive authority of the municipality through the cadastre, and also the local business tax, which is percent of the gross receipts, and explicitly excludes the agricultural sector. Okay, so we're going to be talking about coca growing and cocaine production. And that's why I highlight that this is more for sort of urban kind of businesses. And these taxes amount to about, on average in the country, for 25% of the municipal total income. But there's a lot of variation. The distribution is very skewed and across municipalities, and is quite correlated with development. So let me just show you this. This is because we don't have GDP data at the municipal level in Colombia, so I'm showing you here nighttime lights. But there's a very high and significant positive correlation between fiscal performance, so taxes, and these are own taxes over GDP and development. Okay. And then, the other part of the story is that Colombia produces a lot of cocaine. Colombia accounts for two-thirds of the coca bushes globally, and produces 60% of the cocaine in the world nowadays, and 25% of the cocaine that is consumed in the U.S. And then there is this is the coca cultivation. So coca is this plant that is the main input in the production of cocaine, and this is mainly produced in three countries: Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. And if you look at the evolution over this period in the three countries, is very flat in Peru and Bolivia, and Colombia has this massive sort of decrease first, and then an increase, and a lot of the decrease is due to this big investment of the U.S. government and the Colombian government called Plan Colombia, and then that more or less ended up at the end of the first decade of the 2000s. And then after 2013, there's a huge increase that surpassed the levels of prior to the start of Plan Colombia. So what explains this big increase? So I wrote a paper about this before, in which with Daniel Mejia and Munuprem, and we showed that this increase is at least partially explained by a naive policy announcement. Okay, so let me give you a context, because this is going to be important for this other paper. Okay, we're going to use these sort of results of the first paper to sort of look for exogenous variation in coca growing in this second paper. So this has to do with the peace agreement in Colombia recently with FARC. So negotiations between the Colombian government and FARC, which is the largest guerrilla group in the Western Hemisphere in the last 50 years, and had been active for about 6 decades, started in 2012. And then, it lasted until 2016, but sort of the main milestone or one of the main milestones during the process was in May 2014, in which the parties reached a partial agreement on the problem of illicit crops, which was and is still very big in Colombia. And they came out with this joint press release in which they announced that after the peace agreement would eventually be signed, they would create this program in which they would provide material incentives, and in particular cash, to farmers that had coca and would be willing to change coca for legal crops. Okay, but that's it. They didn't say that as of today, and we have mapped precisely what's the situation today, and we wouldn't allow anything else. So they essentially that provided incentive for a big surge in coca growing. And in the paper that I mentioned that is published in ReCIPE, we showed that both the announcement but also the eventual implementation of that program increased coca growing in Colombia. Okay. Actually, there's this Bermudez Liévano citation here. He's a journalist that was covering the peace negotiations in Havana, and he then wrote a book saying that after that press release, in an internal meeting, the government team actually said, maybe we screwed up because we said that we were going to give cash, and we probably shouldn't have done that. Okay, so we in this paper we study the relationship between the size of the coca economy and also the size of local tax revenue, and we're gonna do that by exploring the exogenous positive shock on coca production after using those results that I show you as a first stage. So essentially, this is what we're gonna do. What I do in the other paper with Daniel and Muno is that we have coca suitability measure, which is exogenous because it depends on sort of soil conditions, climate, etc. Okay, and we show that the interaction of the time variation given by the announcement and coca suitability disproportionately increases coca growing in places that are more suitable relative to less suitable of growing coca. Okay, so this is sort of the main result of that paper, and the first stage of this paper is sort of the interaction of suitability announcement increases coca growing substantially. Okay, and also so we're gonna look then at actual coca growing at the municipal level, interacted instrumented by this first stage. Or instrumented by this interaction, and we're gonna look at property tax revenues and these sort of local business taxation, and we're gonna show that first, coca growing crowds out listed crops, legal crops. Okay, so people just forget about legal crops. Then also we're going to show that coca growing reduces property tax revenue. And this is likely associated, we have sort of suggestive evidence that this is associated with a decrease in the value of land, in land valuation by the cadastre. And then we're going to show that coca growing increases economic activity using nighttime lights. Okay, so there's a substantial increase in economic activity, but this doesn't affect the local business tax. Okay, so that means that there's an increase in informal sort of shadow economy, which actually is cash-based, and we're going to show suggestive evidence of that by showing that the number of deposits and therefore the use of cash, number of deposits decreases, and therefore the use of cash in those economies increases. Okay, so we have a bunch of data from different sources of all these variables that I have mentioned before. And this is what I do essentially, what I already mentioned essentially in equations. So the second stage is, we're interested in the effect of coca growing on outcomes related to local taxation and mechanisms. And we're gonna throw a bunch of controls predetermined interacted with the year fixed effects. And those are going to be selected with lasso, and then we're going to have municipal fixed effects and department year fixed effects, and then the first stage is sort of predicting coca with that interaction, the time variation given by the announcement, and the suitability index at the municipal level. And then we're going to also be looking at the reduced form. In particular, the reduced form is going to be useful to look at sort of the dynamics of this. Okay, so this is an IV, but also has a flavor of a diff in diff. So I gonna look at the event study sort of dynamics. And so I already told you about the first stage. This is exactly a slide that I had showed you before. So we do have a very strong first stage, and then in terms of the first result, we're showing that there's a reduction in legal crops. Okay, and this I'm showing you both the IV and the reduced form. So there is this reduction in legal economic activity. And there is a reduction in the property tax revenues, a differential reduction in coca growing municipalities in property tax revenues. And then, we posit that part of the mechanism, we have to do a better job in terms of mechanisms here. And I told you that this is preliminary, but part of the mechanism could be related to the value of these land that is no longer used for legal crops, and also is used by illegal actors or is related to illegal actors in the sense that those who buy the coca harvest. Okay, and I'm showing here that in particular the properties, and this is a division that is done by the cadastre and not by us, but the properties that are high value properties are those that are reducing their value the most. Unfortunately, we don't have data on land valuation as we're speaking. Just yet we don't have data on land valuation prior to 2014, so I cannot show pre-trends here. And so it would be great to have that data so that at least we show that the result that we have in the right-hand side is not something that is coming from before, but it's part of work in progress. And then the second result is that there is sort of no effect or maybe a little bit of an increase that is not significant, that is not very large in terms of the local business tax. That doesn't include agriculture, because if it include agriculture, it would be automatically it would be a decrease explained by the fact that legal production is decreasing. So this is more in the urban areas of those municipalities. We do see a little bit of an increase that is sort of noisy and is very small. But at the same time, we see a big increase in the density of nighttime lights. Okay, so there seems to be more economic activity that is not being picked up by the local business tax. Okay, so this means that this is an informal economic activity that is not sort of feeding into the fiscal capacity of the municipality, and therefore is not being translated into public good provision and public service provision, which is part of the sort of a problematic loop that we want to point out. And related to that, we show that deposits in banks decrease differentially in these municipalities, which shows that more cash is being used in sort of daily transactions in these municipalities, consistent with the fact that this is sort of increasing economic activity. There is more shallow sort of economic activity. So our interpretation is that there's a substitution away from legal crops because coca is, of course, more profitable, and because peasants are expecting to be paid by the government for these crops. And actually what we show in that other paper is that the expectation of cash increased coca growing, but also once the program was implemented, because it was implemented not at the municipal level but at the plot level. Right, so we see that in municipalities in which some people start being eligible for the program, other plots in those same municipalities, so their neighbors, start growing coca because they actually realize that the neighbors are being paid to buy of the coca for crop substitution. So the erosion of the property tax base. Because of weak state capacity at the local level that is further weakened by the presence of an illegal economy associated with the presence of armed groups, and the reduction of the land valuation, and then the fact that economic growth. There's economic growth, but with a very stable sort of business tax revenue, which implies that there's a growing informality and cash-based shallow economy. Okay, so local revenues in Colombia can finance things such as social development, so education, health and welfare, infrastructure and public goods, economic development, environmental sustainability, governance, security, institutional management. So currently we're trying to systematize data on sort of these outcomes to explore the downstream consequences of the sort of changing the composition of these economies and the reduced fiscal capacity to see the extent to which these kind of expenditures that are discretionary of the municipalities sort of going down and there's a decrease in welfare. even if there's an increase in economic activity, we would expect that there's a decrease in overall welfare in these municipalities, and this is part of what we're doing right now. So, I think, because I've written papers on this, I think that the peace agreement would far improve welfare in Colombia. It improved sort of schooling and human capital, and reduce substantially the number of landmine victims, and increase sort of the sort of small firms at the local level, even if temporarily. But it unintentionally increased cocoa growing, and we document how this spilled over fiscal capacity and increased the size of the shadow economy. So I think that's it. There's a question there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is super interesting. I was wondering if you could just share a bit more on this connection between the property value, the high value properties going down, and the cocoa growing on those crops. Is it the case that, say I was growing a cash crop before and now I switch to cocoa, then my value of my property goes down? Because that was the one piece where I was trying to make that link of why do we see the property values going down that leads to the lower property taxes. But super interesting work here.
So let me just respond and then pass it to Felipe. So I think that there are two mechanisms that we don't have still data on those mechanisms, but we're trying to. But I think that conceptually there are two mechanisms. One is that because the land that is now being used for an illegal crop, it loses its market value, right? Because nobody wants to buy a land that is being used that is being connected with illegal armed groups and being used for illegal crops, right? So I think that's a reason why it loses market value. And the other one is that it might be the case, and we're trying to check whether this is empirically testable or not. It might be a case that there is sort of capture of the executive authorities of municipalities that actually, update the cadastre in order to sort of reduce the value strategically of these lands. So they are not, so they go under the radar. And they can continue with their legal business. So I think these are there are the two mechanisms that we have thought of, but we're working on trying to sort of pinpoint what explains that relationship. Thank you for the question.
Just in one word, transfers, and whether they're compensating or not for these municipalities, or if you have data on that.
Yeah. They are not compensating because transfers are, they are deterministic, right? They are a function of population and stuff like that. So they are very flat over time in Colombia across municipalities.